What's up, dudes? Welcome back to another episode of Rhomas Men's Team. Pretty simple. We are a group of guys helping each other make progress towards each other's goals. If you're new to the channel, awesome and welcome. If you want to help support the channel and join our pro team, head over to rhomasteam.com/pro, where you can contribute to us on a donation basis. We also give you access to exclusive content, mastermind groups, etc., etc. So anyway, hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the team. Mr. Ray, back in action is Dima. Dima, good morning. Ray, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Life is good. It is Canadian Thanksgiving up here. We talked about that on Friday, so today is the official holiday. No school, no work. Sarah is working, however. The architecture firm where she works created this gorgeous little yoga retreat.
Oh, nice.
So she's in there doing photos for their website and their marketing materials. And I'm just going to find a nice little picturesque spot. I mean, you would love it here, dude, because, you know, we're all about self-care and being a warrior in the garden instead of a gardener in the war. Mm-hmm. Right? So... I was reminded of that expression when there's something called Nuit Blanche, White Night, in all over the world. It was started in Paris, and it's a art festival that goes from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., where there's all kinds of public sculptures and all kinds of like activations and parties and performances. And so my friend had a big sculpture downtown Toronto, and they did a guided meditation around it.
Oh, nice.
And so there were a couple of different people leading it. There were women with soft, soothing voices, close your eyes, you are a cloud, which is great. But then there was this guy from this meditation group called Prefrontal Cortex, Operation Prefrontal Cortex. And it was like... And it was like he had this kind of like warrior's attitude towards meditation. That's all I can. That's the only way I can describe his tone.
Hell yeah!
And because it's like yoga meditation isn't just for moms who have nannies taking care of the kids, or do you know what I mean? Or it's not for just for gurus in India, but like who needs mental clarity more than a warrior? Mm-hmm. When everything is foobar all around him, right? So I just loved.
What was his occupation, or maybe prior?
I don't know, dude. I don't know. He was like,
just a killer.
He was, just like a young man, maybe 23, 24, maybe of Muslim faith, maybe not. Light brown skin, kind of Arab, and just that tone of like, that that just gave me the sense that a clear mind is as important as any other weapon in the warrior's arsenal. That's just the feeling I got.
Oh, and without a doubt. Yeah, I'm reading the book right now called Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. Hold on, let me look at it.
CBT.
Yeah, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. Where are you? Sorry, guys, bear with me 1 second because it's a phenomenal book I'd like to share with you guys. We should probably even consider reading it, to be honest. Cognitive Behavioral Therapy Made Simple, 10 Strategies for Managing Anxiety, Depression, Anger, Panic, and Worry. I wish they didn't even, I wish also they put in that tagline, and for all other humans. Do you know what I mean? Because that tagline might push other people away, but it's going through just at a practical level how the brain works. It's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So anyway, in there it talks about the prefrontal cortex and how like you should basically do exercises for it, et cetera. And it sounds like that guy was.
Now I don't know, like other than the name of that meditation group, I don't know what part of the brain that is and what it does. Like, is it advanced function? Is it reptile brain? What is the prefrontal cortex?
Yeah. So
as far as you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. As far as I know, so you basically have let's just say two different systems in your brain, even though I think this is technically wrong, but I think pragmatically it's right. So you've got your limbic system, which is sort of like they call your reptilian brain. So it's the fight or flight. It's the amygdala, the hippocampus. It forces you into some sort of action or depression or whatever. Overreaction, I think, is probably the symptom that most people feel from their limbic system, most likely. And then your prefrontal cortex is kind of, they typically say, is the CEO of your brain. So it's up here in the forehead. If you ever notice, I believe, to get a visual on this, if you ever look at like an ape or some sort of monkey, I believe their skull slopes down when ours kind of like goes up from the brow, if that makes sense. My understanding is that it's...
You telling me the bigger the forehead, the more CEO brain a man's got?
Yeah, that's exactly right, buddy. So
that's what I like to hear. I've always thought that. I always thought that was the case.
So I think, and again, maybe
because Kaizen is all forehead, right? right back to the shoulders.
We got to bring him on actually because he just had a huge win. So Kaizen, if you're up for it, I'll invite you on. So it's the relationship between those two, but apparently the prefrontal cortex is supposed to be in the driver's seat. That is the captain of the airplane. If you do not have that captain there, which you can eject him from the plane if you don't get proper sleep, if you take drugs and alcohol, if you don't have proper nutrition, if you don't have proper exercise, et cetera, all of those things. So you are removing essentially the functionality of your prefrontal cortex, which is absolutely essential. So I can understand what your warrior meditator friend was saying.
Mm-hmm. And CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, it is from my personal experience, not my expertise, it is a kind of practical therapy. Not really getting to the root of why your relationship with your mother has kind of poisoned all relations with women, or not that kind of therapy, but it's like just knowing why your brain fires certain activity. And then there's a great list of 10 cognitive distortions that we'll get into in that book, such as catastrophizing, always assuming everything's going to go wrong, right? If one thing bad happens to you, you say, why does this always happen to me? Right? Or like if you lose a game of, tic-tac-toe, you say, I never win anything. So it's like the always never kind of, and so those kind of like patterns, I think they call them, right? Those kind of patterns of that kind of automatic thinking. CBT helps you to stop, like we talked about so much in this group, stop, take a beat, and think, you know what, I actually don't always lose. I do have some things to be grateful for. And like a pro athlete, if I've lost this swing, or I've lost this inning, or I've lost this, down, I just have to clear my head and go back to my training and try again.
Yeah, and from my understanding, I think cognitive behavioral therapy and rational emotive behavioral theory, they have some sort of therapy. They have some sort of connective tissue, and I believe even if you follow the origin, I think the connective tissue goes back all the way to Stoicism, from my understanding, which for me is like phenomenal news, because there's a lot of different types of practices of therapy out there that honestly, I don't want to say I disagree with, but I didn't find very helpful, because I've gone to the retreats, I've gone to, and a lot of things, I don't know, like screaming into a pillow, or like looking at a man and yelling at his face and pretending he's my father, et cetera. I can appreciate the exercise, and it does seem like some people got benefit out of that, but I literally got zero benefit out of it. I very much relate to cognitive behavioral therapy and rational emotive behavioral therapy. Right. It feels to me extremely logical. You're assessing at least some level the probabilities of things. Mm-hmm. So, okay, what I'm about to get in a fight about, what is the real outcome of that? What is the payoff of that? Right? Mm-hmm. Oh, I always do this. Do you really always do that? Or how about you define it more accurately? It feels about 30% of the time this is what happens to me. Oh, great. I got 70% of the time on the upside. It's the exact opposite of what my default was. So different things like that. Man, I wish everybody would study this stuff. I wish everybody would meditate, and I wish everybody would learn how to logically and statistically think. And I do think cognitive behavioral therapy is a good gateway drug into highly analytical and rational thought.
Well, Wes, you can't change someone who doesn't want to be changed. So I think the best thing we can do is just practice what we preach, and show the world, show the other men out there the benefits that we personally reap from from this kind of self-examination and doing the work.
Yep. So I wanted to see if we can finish up the last 6 steps, if you're cool with that, because on
absolutely.
Friday we went through the first six steps of the 12-step program. Ray is doing a great job of coaching us through it, even down to the word of saying, hey, there's no fat on these bones. It's each word is precise. Yeah. So let me pull up this. So I think we have 12. And am I doing, was it NA?
Yeah, because the NA 12 steps, they don't use the word alcohol. They use just the word, they make it broader than that. So it's inclusive of drugs, alcohol, gambling. It can be inclusive of whatever ailment you are facing. And it, again, like the purpose of this discussion, for those who just tuned in, is not a analysis of addiction and recovery, but rather how the author, Dobson of Levels of Energy, says that the 12 steps of recovery are actually a good model for moving from lower levels of energy, your crime, your hate, your shame, your addiction, to a higher state of energy, which is like success, love, trust, and then higher still to the states of enlightenment.
Yep. Perfect. Okay, so just to remind everybody, we'll go through the first 6 steps real quick. So number 1, we admitted we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. That's number 1.
That is the internal. That's the self dialogue. Look. Yep. This isn't working for me.
Number 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity.
Maybe it hasn't. What me at the wheel hasn't been working so far. Maybe I need to try entrusting my journey with someone else or someone else's assistance.
Step 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him.
No man is an island, as John Donne said. It doesn't have to be God. It can be the universe. It can be the power of the team. It can be you and your coach. But again, it is just having the humility to say, maybe my limited life experience and my life choices are not the best way to do things.
Yep. Step number 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves.
So this is a difficult step because you have to look back and make a list of all the bad things you've done and all the bad thoughts you've had. And this is best done with a coach or with a sponsor, because if you have a very long list of bad behavior and bad thoughts like I did, you can feel moments of hopelessness.
All right. Step number 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being of our exact nature of our wrongs.
So this is the first step where we actually step out of ourselves, step out of the self-examination, right? I've screwed up. Maybe there's something better out there. Maybe the God, the universe, the team, or my mentor, or my sponsor can help me out of this hole. Here's the list of all the terrible things I've done and thought. This is the first step where we're actually out in the world, where we're admitting to God or the group, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So this is where we come clean.
Yep. All right. Gunther, shout out to you. He said he's doing a lunch and learn at work for mindfulness. Hell yeah, buddy.
Amazing, dude.
All right. Step number 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character.
Again, so this step is ready. So, and there's an amazing resource out there. It is a interview between Russell Brand and Jordan Peterson that was done a couple of years ago, where they talk about the same thing, where it's the 12 steps of recovery as a model, not just for a route out of addiction, but for any kind of personal change, right? And what they said about step 6 is we were entirely ready for God to remove all these defects of character. You have to be perfectly honest and say to yourself, am I ready to give up lust? Because let's be honest, lust has an upside. Lust feels good. Am I ready to give up lying? because lying is a kind of protection where I tell people what they want to hear so they don't find out what I've done.
Yep.
You know, like, are you like, so step 6 and so step 6 is entirely ready to have our higher power move the fixed character. Step 7 is we humbly asked him. But like, so it's broken into two steps, because 6 is like, you have to make sure you're ready to give up the drugs, you know, like the drugs and the alcohol, they help you on a daily basis, on a 24-hour clock. They help you avoid feelings of shame and inferiority and inadequacy. Like, these drugs and alcohol are providing a great service to you. You know, if you decide to give them up, you are waking up to a clear mirror reflection of yourself and all your faults, right? That's why the journey out of drugs or out of gambling or out of sex addiction or whatever it is a difficult process. You know, that's why happy isn't promised at the end, right? Because you're living without all these crutches, which are bad for you. But they're crutches all the same. They do, like, these are survival mechanisms that help you get through your misery. So you have to, again, be entirely ready to have your higher power remove these defects of character.
Hey dudes, sorry for the interruption here. Just wanted to let you know, if you want to join our pro team, go to romasteam.com/pro. You can help support the channel. You will also get access to exclusive content, masterminds, one-on-one sessions, etc. All right, back to the episode.
Yeah, and what's hitting me I'm looking at step number 7. So that's okay. So we've gone through steps number 1 through 6. We went into those in detail last meeting. So now we're on step number 7.
Yes.
Right. So
So the way 6 is entirely ready to have them removed and 7's asking them to remove. That's why I elaborated a little more on 6, and we're into the meat of it now.
Yep. Okay. So now step number 7 is we humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings.
So at this point, you have analyzed that, yes, lust is awesome. Yes, the rush of gambling is awesome. Yes, the way drugs take away my feelings of inadequacy is awesome. But living without them is better. Like, those things are awesome, but they happen to be destroying my life and making me even more miserable. Kaizen writes in the notes, substances numb down the bad feelings you have become. Numb down the bad feelings. Okay, sure. Like you cut yourself, there's kind of a numbing agent or something, right, to clean the wound and all that. But you become dependent on them. Dealing with them raw dog style is harder, but makes you stronger and more able to deal moving forward, right? So let's say you were abused as a child, and you take drugs to stop the nightmares and the shame and all the mental baggage that comes with it. Okay. That's understandable. It wasn't your fault. You were a kid. You were a minor. But it's incumbent on you to rise above that scar and define and not let that define you, right? So maybe the chaotic childhood I had made me think that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't a good enough, rich, white, heterosexual, able-bodied Christian male. Mm-hmm. You know, like, and so the drugs comforted me away from that inadequacy, but the drugs also keep me in that inadequate stage, like paused, right? So it takes courage to humbly ask the higher power to remove these shortcomings, because without them, you know, I have to honestly say I don't have a job. I have to honestly say I dropped out of school. I have to honestly say I got kids all over town, or whatever it is, and just and that have the maturity and the kind of the manliness to live with those consequences. Mm-hmm. Right. So, and this takes humility, right? I love that word humble. It's humble. Humble's written all over this thing, right? It takes humility to admit that we're powerless over our addiction, that our lives have become unmanageable. It takes humility to think that I'm not qualified to dig myself out of this hole, right? It takes humility to say, okay, God or the higher power, the team or the coach or the sponsor, you know, I'm going to give you the keys. I'm going to give you the controls. And so humility, and it's something we talk about all the time. And again, like being a warrior in the garden, he's humble, right? He's not flexing his muscles. He's not like chopping heads off, right? He's like pulling weeds out, right?
Yep.
So humility is really like it's got to, I don't know what number it is, but it's got to be high on the level of energy, because it's such an enlightened state. So we humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings.
Yeah, I think that word is what hit me most in this step as well. And it's just to bring that and be present to it daily, of it's not just doing the thing, it's doing it in the right way. So I think oftentimes, and I could use that for, let's say, my team, where if I'm asking for something, am I doing it in a humble way? And even if it's a boss to subordinate relationship, that sort of thing,
Sorry, I want to just alert you. Oh, there was like a monarch butterfly that landed on my shoe. But no, absolutely. And humility, it's probably easier to just bark an order, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's, so a quick riff on this. I just had a small epiphany over the weekend, because I was talking to somebody, actually, funny enough, one of the people on our team, and she was sharing with me how we had grown up in a similar environment where there was alcohol involved early on in our childhood. Not that we would drink, but the people who were kind of leading us. And I never knew this, but she said that for her, it led to her always walking on eggshells, because you never knew what the reaction was going to be. You could do the same thing last week and you do it this week, and all of a sudden the mom or dad or aunt or uncle freaks out. And you, as a kid, you don't understand that. So then as a natural response, you start to distance yourself, because when somebody's flailing or could potentially flail and hit you with something, whether that be, metaphorically or physically, et cetera, then you tend to distance yourself, and you tend to like start to be almost hyper aware of the surroundings, because you're trying to look for any micro hint that could lead into that chaos. And
it's a survival. It's a survival mechanism. It's probably where people pleasing comes from. Yeah. And because like you do something, like you ask for help with your homework when dad's had one beer and he's nice. You ask him when he's hungover, he barks at you. Yep. You ask him when he's run out of alcohol, he barks at you. When you ask him when he's had too many beers, and he says homework's not important, right? So like that kind of like instability is what comes to mind when you talked about that.
Yeah, and I'm bringing that up because holy hell, it took me 36 years to connect those dots. And I was like, oh, that's why I do it. It was awesome to talk to this woman about this. So then I'm only saying it to the dogs now, because think about that. If you are still drinking, or if you're still doing whatever, no judgment, but just know that there's a certain probability that will cause that kind of chain reaction. It's something that you might not even be aware of. And I was listening to Andrew Huberman's podcast on alcohol this past weekend.
So did I.
Oh, phenomenal.
Eye-opening, man.
Oh yeah. Right. Like where he literally talks about it, like, and he doesn't like, splice words at all. He's like, alcohol is a poison. He said poison.
One drink a day shrinks your brain.
Dude, it's insane. And also I believe what he said is like, that can also be averaged out. So you might say, oh, well, I don't drink every day. I just happen to drink 6 beers on the weekend, something like that. 6 beers on Saturday and then 3 beers on Sunday, whatever. But the natural cause and effect of that is human communication and socialization is such a tightly closed loop. If you think about it, that's why stand-up comedy is so freaking hard, right? Like it looks easy, like Shane and Matt, et cetera, make it look really easy, but it's a really hard thing, like, because it essentially almost requires a reverse engineering of human sociology. When you start to put alcohol in your system, it knocks off of those, in my opinion, those calibration tools. And if those calibration tools are knocked off by 4%, that's the difference of tonality. That's the difference of decibel
body language
they use. 100%. And since we're always pinging off each other, imagine if you're now drinking and you're around your friends or your family, or God forbid, a younger person who is being influenced by you. You're sending off and you're absorbing signals is probably very likely, if you're drinking or doing any other sorts of substances, way out of balance. And you, whether like it or not, we all have a responsibility to not only what we say, but also how we are heard and how we are felt within reason, right? So I think the less substances we use, in my personal opinion, I don't use any. I use literally zero, and I think everybody on this team knows that. And I don't judge anybody who does. But please know what you're doing when you start to mess up in my opinion, your greatest gift, which is your brain, your ability to think. Like Charlie Munger says, it should be your moral obligation to become as logical and as intelligent as possible. And I very much agree with it.
100%. And again, no judgment. And Huberman, in fact, it annoyed Sarah the way he kept saying, no judgment. This is not a criticism of anyone's lifestyle. It's just the science. And I'll just reiterate that. It's like to all the guys out there, like I've smoked or drank anything, just about anything you can get a guy to sell you. Okay. So it's not a judgment. It's not a condemnation. The path of progress has taken me out of that life, and if you still drink and you still smoke, that's fine. We're just letting you know what the biological consequence of that is.
Yep.
And so there's no judgment. We're not perfect. We're just, we're on the path of progress, and we're dedicated to self-mastery. And part of our self-mastery is learning, what unhealthy food does to the body, what cigarettes do to the body, what alcohol do to the body, what a lack of exercise does to the body. There's no judgment. We're just sharing our journey on the path of progress.
Yep. Yeah. And learning the cause and effect of things is very important. And if you are okay with that cause and effect, then hell yeah, go and do it. Okay. Step number 8. We made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all.
Again, so just in the language of recovery or my personal journey of recovery, 8 and 9 seem to be the same step, but they're broken apart for a reason. Number 8 is we made a list of those we harmed and became willing to make amends. 9 is we made direct amends when possible. And so, again, why don't they just say make amends, right? Because in my personal journey, when I was off drugs or alcohol for a week or 2 or 3 weeks, I made a list, of those we are tempted to make a list of those who we harmed the most, or those that sting our heart the most. For example, calling up that restaurant you used to work at and saying, I stole, a bunch of money, a bunch of steaks, a bunch of cups and plates from your restaurant. That might be an example of you might be ruining someone's day. They might not be requiring an apology from you, and you might be opening up a can of worms there. Right. So your sponsor or your coach will be a good guide, or even your friends would be a good guide, or your higher power is a good guide as to which ones you should, which ones you shouldn't. But before anything, we make a list of all the persons we have harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So, for example, if I left my daughter at age 2 on the roof of a building so I could go score some drugs and came back, and by some miracle she was still there unharmed, I might want to tell, that's a hypothetical, I didn't do it, but I might want to tell my wife that I did that to be unburdened of that shame. That might be cause to take away my child from me forever. So I'm not sure if that is the way to make amends, or just be committed to being in my daughter's life in a constructive way. Right. So that's, so we make a list first so we can just get it all on the table. And, before we sort out which ones can be direct amends, as it says in 9, except when to do so would injure them. So that is the reason that 8 and 9 are broken up.
So is it fair to say that even making the list is a therapeutic process?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you've talked 100 times about writing out your problems before you go and commit the murder that you're motivated to. Write, or punching somebody out, like writing out your life story, you've also said, just helps you kind of like organize the Lego in your brain and help you a little bit better understand what you're good at and what still needs work.
Yep.
So yeah,
Awesome.
the writing, yeah, as you well know, the writing is thinking, you know?
Oh yeah. And I would say if any of the dogs are going to go through this process, when you're going through the writing process, be as accurate as possible. I think I told this story before. I went to the Landmark seminar. I think a few of the other dogs have done this as well. One of the most profound exercises that I did when I was there is they put up like a 2-list whiteboard, and it was going through past trauma, and you had to tell you had to give a narrative around that trauma. And they would invite people up and you'd have to go through it. And I'll never forget, this one guy had gone up there and he was talking actually, and it was like the biggest guy in the room and he looked like the freaking Hulk, man. So when he went up there, and you could tell he had like a more of like a grumpy guy sort of like a vibe. And long story short, he comes out and tells how he was raped when he was a kid by his uncle, and it was horrible. Now, when he told that story, one of the pieces of it to get him through the exercise and to sort of separate the emotion from the action was he had to tell the crowd what happened. And of course, the first time he does it, he says, you know, I was brutally raped by this monster, right? And he gives a whole bunch of more explanation. And what the moderator does is they go through and they write down the observable facts. Okay, you were raped. And then on the second side of the board, they tell about the story. So what is the story part of it? And then he puts monster. So now they go back and forth. No, I was raped by a monster. It's like, okay, do monsters actually exist? And of course the guy's like, yes, because this guy was a monster, that sort of thing. So as irrational as that sounds, when you have a traumatic event or you have this trauma in your head, you will oftentimes add things to hyperbolize it, to exaggerate it. And that feels good and it feels appropriate. But if you have a coach kind of going through with you and you can start to water down or get more precise on that language, that helps. I promise you it helps. So if you're dealing with anything like that, try to almost pretend a robot was writing the document for you. So anyway, just a little tidbit. I do this every once in a while if I'm like really dealing with something. I try to break it down into its atomic parts as if a robot was writing it. Sorry, Ray, continue, please.
No, absolutely, Wes, 100%. And also, just to generalize a little bit on that, it's the power of journaling. It's why journaling is part of the scorecard.
Yep, exactly.
So that is your step.
All right.
8, I believe, right? Step 8 is making the list. Step 8 is the writing.
All right. Step 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others.
Right. And so, it's kind of like, it's logical, intuitive. It's obvious that you make the list. That's one step. And then you go around apologizing for your behavior. That's the next one. Or making it. Now again, it's interesting. It's not making it's making amends. It's not apologizing. It's not repaying. It's not restitution. Like the making amends term is very carefully selected, and I wonder why. Make amends. So just off the top of my head, it's again like an apology might not be what's required. Right. An envelope of cash might not be what is required, but making amends is how would you define that, Wes?
I don't know. I mean, you're getting me to think about this, so I'm actually going to Google it to see if there's some sort of definition.
And while you do that, I'll just say again, make direct amends whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. So, I mean, a form of like, just a hypothetical. You committed a sexual assault while you were a drug addict, alcoholic, gambling addict, sex addict, whatever it was. Direct amends would be an example of that would be apologizing to the person you assaulted. Indirect amends is an example of making a donation to a assault survivor shelter. Right.
Yeah.
So that's the nuance between that. That's one example of direct amends versus indirect amends.
Yeah. So I think what I'm getting on here, reading through it briefly, is that making amends could include saying I'm sorry, but it can also include a whole bunch of other things. So for instance, it actually might be additional. It might be, hey,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry plus.
Plus here's $100, right? Like for the $50 that I stole from you or something like that.
Yeah.
I also imagine it could be, oh, I'm going to make amends. I wronged this guy, but now he has since passed away. So
Yes,
maybe I
excellent.
do something symbolic with his family or whatever that is.
Or a cause, right?
Yep.
He was an educator, so make a donation to his school. Right. So, but now, Wes, if he died, direct amends is not possible. But the nuance here is when it is possible, however, it would injure them or others. Right. So right. So if like you had a child out of wedlock with somebody, a hypothetical, and you went and that, and you feel guilty about it, but that woman has remarried and has told the kid that the new guy is their father, and that has worked for them. And so to go and make amends and say, I'm sorry that I knocked up your mom and I took off, like that might injure the person.
Yeah.
Right. That might not, that
shattering.
That might not be helping.
In one of the seminars I went to, I think this was the Sterling Men seminar, and I don't necessarily recommend that one, but they did talk about something like this, which is when you get in those sticky situations where, hey, I kind of feel like I should go apologize, but it's going to create an earth-shattering consequence, particularly for other people.
Yeah.
What the moderator said there is, so kind of like tie goes with the runner sort of thing. If that's the case, it's now your responsibility to bear that burden.
Okay.
And
another hypothetical.
Yep.
Another hypothetical. You stole from a drug dealer. You stole from a crack or heroin dealer, and to make it right, you want to give the heroin dealer back $1,000.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That might injure someone else. That might injure the community. So you make that donation or some kind of donation, or you donate of your time to a recovery center.
Got it. Perfect. Okay, so we're on.
So this, we can kind of think of the ideas of karma in this one, right? Where you if in case it's not possible or would injure someone to make amends to them directly, you think of it in terms of karma and like how to restore the karmic balance of your actions or of the universe. And again, let's think about also in both of these things. Let's step out of the role of recovery and like think about. Just in terms of personal development, right, and getting up the levels of energy. Same. Actually, there's no difference. You make a list of your shortcomings, and you humbly ask the higher power to remove them. And I guess, and making amends to such people wherever possible. I guess that is just like being honest about your motive, being aware of your motivations on your journey and being honest about what those what the effect was on other people, right? In terms of when you were like climbing up the ladder on Wall Street, or I was trying to sort out my career, are the people that we kind of stepped on or brushed aside along the way. That's like a non-addiction example of making amends and or making the inventory and making amends.
Yeah, and here's what I actually really like step 10, which is we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. It's this sort of like ongoing, hey, you have your code and everything was sort of historical up to this point, and now it's like committing to the in perpetuity, I'm going to be following this code.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the path of progress step, right? That is and this step also, in terms of addiction specifically, this distinguishes the just getting off drugs and then I'm done, or getting off drugs and getting off the the addict thinking, right? And finding a new way of life, right? So it's up till step 10, you can quit drinking, you can quit drugging, you can quit the gambling, you can quit the promiscuity. But step 10, so that's a kind of an affirmative closing the chapter on that part of your life, right? But step 10 is the path of progress, continuing to take a personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. This kind of reminds me that like happiness is not a state. It's not an achievable state. Happiness is more like a continuous, like it's a journey, right? It's like there's no destination. Happiness is not the destination. Happiness is the paying constant attention to these things. And then, of course, when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. That's a tough one for me, right? Again, because that gets us back to step 5. We admitted to God, ourselves, and another human being, right? Promptly admitting it. So, you know what? When I had a screaming match with my neighbor and then caught him the next morning and apologized, that is kind of like a step 10.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I do like the word promptly here. And actually, I think that is the easiest time to solve something. As soon as you feel sorry about it, or and as elementary as this may seem, if I actually had to highlight my life and a lot of conflict that I have, dude, if I just would have solved it in the first inch rather than trying to solve it 300 yards later,
and you use the language closing the loop, right?
Yep.
In that kind of case.
Yep. And knowing that conflict is inherent in human socialization. It is going to happen.
And it's not a bad thing.
Nope. In fact, I would actually say it's an essential thing. But can we do it in the right way? And can we do it at emotional equilibrium? I think the longer you let something drag out, depending on the situation, right? Oftentimes just solve it right there. Hey, I'm sorry about this. I know we had this little thing, or at least it felt that way. Just want to apologize. Let's clean it up. You good? I'm good. Okay, let's move on.
Right. And in my personal case, like I haven't spoken to my brother in over 2 years, or maybe I've spoken to him once or whatever in the last 2 years. And so like, that, I wonder if I could have closed that loop sooner, or if it would have been easier if I closed it within days or weeks. Right. But, I'm also reminded that after 2 years, it's probably easier to close it than after 3 or after 5 or after 20.
Yep.
Right. So like, it's not there. That's why the promptly admitted it. It doesn't say it's your only chance. It's just, it just pays bigger dividends when you promptly admit it.
Yeah. We should earmark that topic, which would be re-engaging, reestablishing, or relinquishing relationships. But the purgatory is tough. You know, like, hey, we're no longer talking, but subconsciously I kind of wish that we would, but I'm not going to be the first. We should talk about that at some point, because I think a lot of guys probably deal with that.
Oh, 100%. Like, not having the emotional tools to resolve that kind of conflict, the ego requiring us to this kind of like, I want to quit before I get fired, or I want to break up with her before she breaks up with me, right? Like this kind of thinking is kind of like it is our lizard brain, chimp brain kind of like default programming. Right. And I see it in others. For example, in my, at the time of my wedding, it was a situation where like, like we had to draw the line where like people living with a partner could bring the partner. But if you were just a girlfriend or boyfriend, we had to draw the line because we couldn't have unlimited guests. Right. And my best man's girlfriend fell into that second category. And so, he best friend my whole life, bailed on me the night before my wedding, and Sarah is still waiting for an apology from him, and he is still waiting for an apology from her 20 years later. right?
Yep.
And so like, and it's easy for me to point it out, this fault in others, right? But I mean, it's the same thing I'm going through with my brother, where it's like, if we are both waiting for the other to apologize first, we can be waiting till the end of time.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
And the other thing is that like, it's eating me up.
Yep.
So like, I'm losing this whole time. Right. Because even though even though it's a kind of a Mexican standoff or a game of chicken where the first one who apologized technically loses by that analysis, we're both losing, right? Like we're by living with these bad vibes. That's anyway. So that's definitely, there's a universe of conversations and lessons to be had there.
Oh yeah.
For a later session.
Let's please earmark that, because I think a lot of individuals deal with that. And I think it's a healthy conversation and a helpful conversation to have.
100%.
Okay, so that was step 10, or we're now on step 11. So step 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out.
All right. So this makes me think again of the book that prompted this whole conversation, Levels of Energy by Frederick Dodson, the scale of 1 to 1,000. The lowest being crime, shame, hate, revenge. The bottom tier, the middle tier is like good behavior and success. And the top tier is meditation, enlightenment, and spirit and wisdom. Right. And so look, we've got the same kind of breakdown here. The first tier is I'm a drug addict, I'm a sex addict, my life has become unmanageable. I'm a rageaholic. I'm disorganized, whatever. So that first tier is the bad behavior. The middle tier is the good behavior, right? Made amends, like put getting out of this hole in the hands of someone else. And then the top tier is spiritual, just like the Dodson's levels of energy. So I'm just realizing the compatibility here, because where are we now, right? 9 was making direct amends. So that's that middle tier good behavior. And now we're into the spiritual realm. Or 10 is 10 is the good behavior as well, right? The continuing to try and be good, and when we're bad, we stop and we promptly admit it. 11, we're in the spiritual realm. We sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry it out. So now here we are in so like the levels of energy, the truly highest among us, we're not slaying dragons. We are not, we're not building cathedrals or building skyscrapers. The highest among us, the best among us, are actually in closest contact with God, the God of their understanding, the universe, the energy that unites us all, whatever. And seeking to improve that conscious contact, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry it out. So now we're in the spiritual realm. We're in the realm of enlightenment. And what do we want? We want to understand his will for us, which is like our purpose, our role, like our meaning, our place in the universe, and then the power to carry out that mission, whichever it may be.
Yeah, and for those of you who will get stuck kind of similar to the way I get stuck when we start getting into like the spiritual, and all of that kind of discussion.
And the God word in particular is a turn off for a certain cohort of people.
Yeah, exactly. The best way that I would say, understand this and perhaps relate to it is there's a certain distancing and separation between chaos and then being able to sit away and observe that chaos. So I'll tell you recently, and by the way, I'm not perfect at it by any stretch of the imagination, but I could definitely say that since I've been meditating and then just trying to learn about wisdom and having conversations on life philosophy with you guys, with Ray, with Matt, blah, 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 et cetera. There was a pretty intense conflict this weekend. that one of the people in our group was involved with. And I could say, if it wasn't for meditation, then I probably would have gotten sucked into it. I do think I helped resolve the conflict, and I'm not giving myself credit. I give credit to the meditation and to putting with you guys, putting my brain through exercises to be able to keep a healthy distance from something, close enough to help solve it, but far enough to not get sucked into it and contribute to it. So if anybody's getting hung up on this like spiritual word or the God word, et cetera, I think there's a certain amount of calmness that you can be acquired through these steps. And maybe that's a good word for you. What calmness, or being involved in the universe, or being separated, but still observing and able to have an impact that you choose. Something along those lines, right? Help fill in any gaps there, but I don't want people to get turned off by the God word or the spiritual word or whatever. Like, if that doesn't fit you, then this is still applicable, because it's applicable to all human behavior, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that we should definitely make an effort to make this program as compatible as possible for secular-minded people. And you don't have to be an atheist. You don't have to believe there's no God. You don't have to believe there is a God, but you're not sure who he is. You don't have to believe in God. You don't have to believe in my God. You don't have to go to my church with me, the 4 p.m. mass that I prefer to go to. Like, if you are secular-minded, this code of living has just as much benefit for you.
Yep.
And there's just as much room for you in this method.
Love it. All right. Step number 12, final step, having a spiritual awakening. As the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all of our affairs.
Right. And so again, this word spiritual comes up, and it's okay, like, that we pause on this word and just try and like translate it for as many different kinds of ears as we can, because spiritual, like, growing up, Irish Catholic, very traditional household, and they don't think that means perfect or good or flawless or like an enviable situation at all. But like the word spiritual, right, was suspect, right? The word meditation was foreign to me. And so like the way I've been thinking about it lately is that like every civilization since the dawn of time has had a spirituality, right? Like we are born, like maybe it's part of that prefrontal cortex that we have that distinguishes us from the apes, that it probably is, that we have a spirituality and a need for a spiritual life, right? Like every civilization has had buildings, has had art, and they've had some kind of spirituality. Again, you don't have to call it religion, but there's that might just be a connection to the rest of to all of the living things, or all of the humans. People like Sam Harris, atheist public intellectuals, use the word consciousness, right? So like the thing that unites us all, that religion or spirituality or meditation or all that tries to define, is just a consciousness that exists in us that maybe doesn't exist in earthworms or doesn't exist in plants. Maybe it does, but it definitely exists in us. And so 12 is, again, these steps are in order for a reason, right? Because 12 is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. We tried to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So only when you're at step 12 are you really qualified to tell people who they should make direct amends to and who they should not make direct amends to, for example, right? It's only when you have that kind of, like when you have completed steps 1 through 11 accurately, that you're in a position to carry the message and to kind of be a guide. Right. And again, it doesn't say fix people, right? So like you might think it's save other people that were in your situation before, right? But it's not asking you to save them. It's not asking you to fix them. It's just asking you to carry the message. Think about that. Like, and that's good enough. If you read a good book, if you read a book that changes your life, if you see a YouTube video that changes the way you look at things and you become more disciplined and more effective at work, all you can do is carry that message, right? And tell other people what worked for you. You can't program them, right? So that's, again, so the words are very carefully selected.
I like that idea. And just in general, I like that idea, whether it be for business or for personal relationships. The best that I can do and hope to do is just to share with you a message that has been impactful to me, not to bend you to exactly what I want you to be, not to persuade you. Hopefully the message will get you to go in that direction if I think it's what's best for you. But if not, I'm not so attached to the outcome of you changing, but I am committed to delivering the message that hopefully helps you change.
Yeah. And so another interesting, and again, another interesting thing just to round out this discussion is that, like, you talk about service to others so much, right, as being an important part of a rich, fulfilled life, a meaningful life. And it's funny, like, because when I think of service to others, I think of like a school teacher or a priest or something that doesn't pay very much, you know? But like, it just seems like service, like you talk about it, Kaizen talks about it, and here it is again. And it just seems to be like service to others it's almost, again, it like the need for a spiritual side. Service to others is almost like it is a default requirement of having a meaningful life. You know, we don't require you to do it, but it just seems to be an essential part of everyone's kind of unlocking their happiness, their sense of meaning, their being able to live with themselves, or right?
Yep, absolutely, without a doubt. We could go whole deep into that part of the discussion, but that, in my opinion, like we've talked about in the past, creating value for others and for yourself, in my opinion, is one of the highest orders that a human can be tasked with, and therefore one of the most rewarding experiences when you create value for others and also for yourself. Include yourself in that others too. Right.
Or Jordan Peterson would include your future self,
right,
as one of the others that you have a responsibility towards.
Exactly. Dude, thank you so much for the guidance through these 12 steps. If any of you guys have it, we're going to be eventually putting this up. We've recorded all of these sessions. So if you missed it, if you missed the last one, let me know. But we've now gone through the 12 steps. Ray, thank you for walking us through that. And I wanted to see if we can bring up Kaizen real quick, because he's got a huge celebration, a huge win, if he's still available. I know we went a little longer today, but let's bring him up if he's available.
Absolutely.
So, Kaizen, one of the original
he's
dogs.
An OG.
Yep.
And generous with his time and with his wisdom.
What up?
Mr. Beast.
There he is.
What is up, brother? So please, I know we don't have a ton of time, but I didn't want to leave you hanging. We want you to share the win. So what's the big win, brother?
Yeah. So this was completely random last week. I was going through a bunch of different interviews with some companies, and one of them, a recruiter reached out to me on LinkedIn and talked to me on the 5th, and then he said he could set up a meeting with me and this company on, I think it was the next day. It had to be. I didn't think anything of it. I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. I talked to them, went through it, and they loved everything that I had talked about with this company. It's pretty much like a perfect opportunity. I didn't think anything of it. And then Friday, which was my birthday, I was out. We went out to lunch, and after we were waiting, I got a call from the people that they were offering me the position right away. And
hell yeah.
It's double what I was making at my last job, like easily. It's basically like opening up the door for a lot other possibilities at this point where it's crazy.
Hell yeah, man. Number one, happy birthday. Number two, great job, dude. That's outstanding. What I hear in that story and it's what you teach me and the rest of the group as well. It's like, be so good they can't ignore you. So if you just constantly work on your skills, the rewards and the results will come to you naturally. And almost the casual tone you had about it, it feels like at the time of like, okay, yeah, cool. Like these guys approached me, happy to give them an hour of my time. Didn't think much of it after that. And all of a sudden they call me back immediately and say, hey, we want to pay you double of what you're currently making. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so weird because I started getting more after we talked about the Levels of Energy book. There's a couple of things. I posted it in the Discord and I think maybe in our Instagram group. But one of the things was writing down on a note card and keeping it with you, your goals. As soon as I did that, within like less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's weird, dude.
No, it's the same with me. Same with me. The vision board I carry around had a picture of a banging gallery art practice. And before I knew it, I was like, wait a second. This new gallery I have is like, looks exactly like it's eerie. Right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So and Kaizen,
like we just had with Troy, he talked about that in vision board, and it reminded me of it. And I was like, okay, well, maybe try some of this stuff out, and it works as long as you like take action and keep working on the things that you're trying to do. That's the most important part. When people talk about the manifesting, they don't want to do the work, but if you're working on it, then it's like an inevitable. There's a video that I'll throw it in the Discord that is kind of on this, but they say to have the mindset that act as if it's impossible to fail. And I wrote that down, stuck it in my bathroom, and I've been looking at it, and that changed like the whole demeanor of the interview process. And I think that's what ultimately led to the success of it.
Dude,
well, Kaizen, sorry, if I can just say, I just wanted to correct some of your language or clarify some of your language, because you use the words like random and surprisingly and stuff like that, but it's not random that these things are happening to you, man. Like, we've been on this journey together, you and I, for 2 years, and I see the dedication you have to your body, to your craft, to being a good father. And so, like, it would be random if you weren't practicing these things for 2 years, right? I also hear you saying this is unlocking. This isn't death till you part. This isn't a union job where you're just going to sit in and be comfortable and secure. Like, this is, you're still on the journey. You might be here for a year. You might be here for 20 years, and in this next job. But it's to unlock those further opportunities. That you have to practice your craft, master your craft, learn new skills, and just be the CEO of your own life, which is what you've been doing. So it's no accident, Wes, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, no, without a doubt. I think, and for those of you guys listening, I think I don't want to shame anybody for not doing the work, because I do think that it's just, to what degree are you engaged? And I do believe that sitting and passively consuming this information from us or from other places, I think is way better than not. It's like way better than just watching Netflix and you can listen to like a positive conversation. So, but it does yield different results when you start to dip into active engagement. And by the way, and there's little nuances along the way. There's still things that I haven't done that we talk about on the team. And it's like, and then I try them, I'm like, holy shit, like, oh yeah, this stuff works. I talk about it all the time. I actually did it. Kaizen's in the same boat. He's been doing this stuff for probably decades at this point. And then here's a conversation. It's like, oh, maybe I need to update my goals a little bit. Maybe I need to do a vision board. Maybe I do need to write that down on a little card. And then 2 weeks later. And I hate even saying this out loud because like it just messes with my robot brain a ton. Like, oh, what do you mean I can just write my goals down and put a picture on a stupid piece of paper and then it happens?
Magical thinking.
But it freaking happens. However, I would say all three of us, especially Kaizen, are doing the work that's required so that when that opportunity does float out there, that all of a sudden it does connect to the prior cumulative effort.
Yeah,
like,
it's
that's
like a
where
compass.
I think it's different than the secret type of a thing.
Right. The manifesting is a compass. The goals are a compass. Now you can't jump out of a helicopter with just a compass and find your way to base camp. Like you have to walk 1 foot in front of the other. Yep. You have to climb down the mountain. But the manifesting is the compass. Yeah. It's just an essential tool. And again, we're not blaming and shaming the guys who don't do it, but they'll be pleasantly surprised of how accelerated the journey to their goals is once they practice some of these techniques.
Yeah, I would also add, at no point, like, it's not easy. It's
Yep.
for no reason ever should you believe that any of this is easy. It's painful. If you want to grow, it's like people post these retarded memes and stuff on Facebook about a caterpillar when it goes into a cocoon, it's destroying its body. And if you're going through, and people put all these like gay ass analogies and stuff on there that if you buy into, you're like, okay, whatever, it's corny ass shit. I don't believe, but it's true. Like, the only way to be a better version of yourself is to go through the pain. If you want to be stronger, you have to work at the gym. If you want to be better at whatever it is, you have to put in that time. But if you're doing it, it's going to suck. And if you just think of life as like a video game, you're a Sims character. I'm gonna build up that stat bar. I'm gonna get to that. And then the only other thing that I would add, because I got to split here in a second, but because sometimes it can get easy to get into a nego prism or a spiral or whatever you want to call it. But find stuff that makes you laugh. Like, find out what's funny about it. Maybe listen to like a comedy podcast or something when you're out doing stuff. And I've noticed that really helps the last little bit of like working on stuff when shit would get kind of dark or you're kind of worried about whatever. If you just laugh a little bit and shake it off and don't be so serious about everything, I think that's like a golden thing that you can kind of take from, if anything that I've ever said, if anybody listens to anything, that's it. Just laugh. Don't think too seriously about it. And I think that'll help you out a lot.
Love it. It's all upside, dudes. Kaizen, congratulations. Happy birthday, dude. Ray, thank you as always. Love you guys.
Oh, yes.
Talk to you on Friday.
Cool.